All right, guys, so today we'll be looking at a new topic. So we're going to be talking about the heart. So we're going to be looking at circulatory system. So basically, have you ever remember most of the times when your parents want to show you some kind of affection, they always tell you, yes, we love you with all our hearts. What if I told you that the heart has nothing to do with the way you feel? Sometimes they always tell you, always speak from your heart, talk from your heart. So they are attributing reasoning to actually the heart. Now, what happens to the brain? The brain will be somewhere looking at you like, okay. But then the truth is this. Yes, the heart is as well very important, but has nothing to do with reasoning. So a lot of our reasoning is actually done from here, the brain. All right. So, but today, what is the heart all about? The heart simply helps us in pumping blood around the body. That's just it. Nothing more, nothing less. So nothing about reasoning is connected to the heart. The heart's only job is like being a pump for the body. But that notwithstanding, the heart is also a very important part of the circulatory system of the human body in general. So I'm going to bring in this heart. Obviously, this was done by yours faithfully. So let's look at the anatomy of the heart in general, okay? So let's quickly see what the heart is truly made of and how the heart functions. So the first thing is this. You should notice that the ones in blue, so I'm going to choose the blue color now. Now, the ones represented in blue has no oxygen, all right? That is blood without oxygen. While the ones represented in red has oxygen. So what this simply means is anywhere you see the blue color, just know that the blood in this particular vessel is without oxygen. And anyone you see in red color, just know that the ones there in that particular blood vessel has oxygen. Okay, so using the blue arrow here now, okay, so we're going to have something of this nature. Now, you see this particular place that I'm pointing at? Good. So we know this as superior, and we know this as inferior. So the superior vena cava, that is the largest vein in the body, all right, drains blood from the upper parts of the body, while the inferior vena cava, this is vena cava. So let me quickly write it here. All right, so the inferior vena cava drains blood from the lower part of the body upwards. Also, the body or the heart has 4 chambers. So we're going to list out the 4 chambers. All right, so I'm going to be writing in black here. Okay, 4 chambers of the heart. Oh, sorry. So the 4 chambers of the heart . Now we're going to have the first one. We have the right atria or atrium and the left atrium. Now plural is atria, okay? Now we have The third chamber, that is the right ventricle. And we have the fourth chamber, the left ventricle. Now, so basically we have two atria and two ventricles. So we have the left and right atria and the left and right ventricle. In some textbooks or in some other learning materials, you might see this atria known as auricle. Okay, so I'm going to label this RA. So this is our right atria, and then I'm going to label this LA. This is our left atria, and then I'm going to label this RV. That is our right ventricle, and I'm going to label this LV. That is our left ventricle. So if you notice what is happening here, the movements of the arrows, okay? Now, blood will first of all, that is blood without oxygen, after circulating around the body, will move in from the top part of the body, all right? So it will move in from the superior vena cava from the top and move into the right atria, or from here, inferior part of the body, it will move in to the right atria. So basically, all the blood that is without oxygen drained from the body enters first in the right atria or the right auricle, all right? Now, when it gets to the right atria, it now moves into the right ventricle. Now, from the right ventricle, the blood moves out and enters a particular vessel we call the pulmonary artery. So I'm going to label this PA. All right, so the pulmonary artery, the job is to take the blood from the heart, that is the blood without oxygen now, will be moved to the lungs, all right, to the left and right what? Lungs. Then at this point, oxygen is what? Added back to the blood. Now, when the oxygen is added back to the blood, now the blood coming back to the heart, all right, no longer goes to the right atria. It now diverts to the what? Left atria. Now, if you watch this arrow here, let me check. Let me bring my red color again. Now, if you watch this arrow here, now this is the blood coming back from the right lung. And then if you watch this one here, this is blood coming back from the left lung. Now, when they come, they now enter into the what? Into the left atria. And then from the left atria, they enter into the left ventricle. And finally, from the left ventricle, they make their way into the what? The artery. That's the aorta, all right, which is the largest artery in the body. So this is the aorta. Now from here, the blood is distributed around the whole body system again. So we have explained two types of circulation here. We explained pulmonary circulation. That is the circulation of blood from the lungs, from the heart, through the pulmonary artery to the lungs, and then back again. Now, the systemic circulation here is movement of blood from the heart around to the whole part of the body apart from the lungs. So let's quickly write this down, okay? So we have pulmonary circulation equal to heart to lung, vice versa, all right? And systemic circulation equal to heart to rest of the body except lungs. All right, so this is basically what happens here. Now we take a pause and you look at this and see if you want to jot down anything. All right, so there are key things to note in this circulation of blood from the heart to the lungs and from the heart to the rest of the body. First of all, I've been mentioning things like the aorta, the arteries, and the veins, and the vena cava. So what are they? They are simply blood vessels that help in circulation of what? Blood, all right? But there are a few things to note. Okay, so let's note a few things. So in circulation, all right, the veins, all right, including the vena cava, okay, carry blood without oxygen. One, that's it, one about veins, okay. Also, veins, that is all veins in this case, bring back blood to the heart. That is another point about veins. So we have mentioned two now. Veins, including vena cava, they carry blood without what? Oxygen. That's why you can see we labeled or we colored them blue. And all veins bring back blood to the heart. But then there is an exception to number one rule. All right, the exception here is pulmonary veins carry blood with oxygen. Now you can see that all the veins that bring back blood to the heart carry blood without oxygen except for pulmonary what? Veins. So I will underline this with red and I will identify. So this is to show that they are carrying blood with what? With oxygen. Now can you pause for a while and identify the pulmonary vein? This is the pulmonary vein, all right? They are always the veins responsible for taking back blood that has gone to the lungs back to the what? Heart. Remember, when this blood gets to the lungs, oxygen is added to them. Now, it is job of the pulmonary veins to do what? Take the blood back to the heart. Remember, number 2 says that all veins bring back blood to the heart. Okay? So we go on to the next one. We look at the arteries now. By the way, one more thing about the veins, all right? That is number 4 here now. The largest vein in the body is known as vena cava. And vena cava can either be superior when it's coming from the top or inferior when it's coming from below or bottom. All right? The second group of things you need to note, all right? Blood vessels taking blood away from the heart are called arteries. All right, so arteries take away blood away from the what? Heart. Why veins bring back blood to the what? Heart. Okay? And then you have the second rule. All arteries carry blood with oxygen. So remember, the veins carry blood without what? Oxygen, except for the pulmonary what? Veins. Exception to number 2. So all arteries carry blood with oxygen except for pulmonary artery. All right? So remember, all veins carry blood without oxygen except for what? Pulmonary what? Veins. In this case, all arteries carry blood with oxygen except for pulmonary what? Arteries. All right? And then we go to the fourth one. The largest artery, is known as the aorta. All right, so the largest artery is known as what? The aorta. All right, so this is the big diagram you can see here. All right, good. So we have mentioned things about the veins and the arteries. Okay, if you notice PA, which is our pulmonary artery, which is the exception that carries blood without what? Oxygen, is also what? Colored in what? Blue, to show that it's carrying blood without what? Oxygen. But look at here, the pulmonary vein, which is bringing blood from the lungs, is colored in what? Red, to show that the blood has what? Oxygen. Okay, good. Now let us go to valves. All right. Now, in the case of valves, all right, we have between, what is the function of the valves first? Valves prevent backflow of blood. So it ensures that blood flows in one direction. So it prevents the backflow of blood. And between the right atrium and the right ventricle, we have what we call the tricuspid valve. All right. So between RA and LV, we have the tricuspid valve. This is because the tricuspid valve has 3 flaps. So from the word tri, obviously. And then between the left atrium and the left ventricle, we have the mitral or bicuspid valve. Simply meaning it has 2 flaps in this case. All right. And then between the aorta and the left ventricle, also between the pulmonary artery and the right ventricle, we have the semilunar valve. Now, these valves simply ensure that there is no backflow of what? Blood. You can see the direction of the arrows, so that when blood flows in, this represents the valves. So when blood flows in, it flows in one what? Direction, okay? It does not have to do what? Move backwards. Now let's go to thickness. The left ventricle, the walls of the left ventricle is thicker, all right? The walls of the left ventricle is thicker than the walls of the right ventricle. Why? From the right ventricle to the pulmonary artery and simply to the lungs, which is a short distance. Okay, so the thickness is not that so much required. But for the left ventricle, it has to contract so strongly. So the walls of the left ventricle is always thicker than the right ventricle because it has to pump blood around the whole body parts. And the contraction of the heart is known as systole or systole. And the relaxation is diastole. So systole is when the heart contracts, and diastole is when the heart relaxes. All right? So the relaxation part and the contraction part, this is known as systole and diastole. So this is basically all about circulatory what? System. So let's quickly recap here. Now, in a nutshell, when the blood that is drained from the rest of the body, now this blood is without oxygen, moves through the veins and gets to the vena cava, the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. they move into the right atrium. Now, in the right atrium here, the blood is now pumped into the what? The right ventricle. The particular valve that enables these direct movements or unitary movements is known as the tricuspid what? Valve. So the blood is now pumped into here to prevent what? Backflow of blood. And from the right ventricle, it is further pumped into the what? Pulmonary what? Artery. And the valve that we can find here is known as the semilunar what? Valve. So from the pulmonary artery, it moves to the lungs, both the left and right what? Lungs. Now, at this point, gaseous exchange occurs, and then oxygen is now added to the blood, and then the blood needs to be brought back to the heart. This time around, it is coming back again through the what? The pulmonary veins. Remember, all veins bring blood back to the what? Heart. Now, the first point of entry into the heart this time around is the left what? Atrium. Now look at the arrow here. Now the left atrium, the blood is now passed on into the what? Left ventricle. And the valve that can be found there is known as the mitral valve or the bicuspid valve. Now at this point, the blood gets into the left ventricle. Now from the left ventricle, the blood is now pumped into the aorta. Let me simply write this. All right, I should have labeled this earlier. Now the blood now moves into the aorta. And from the aorta is circulated to the rest of the parts of the body. And the valve between the left ventricle and the aortic valve is also the semilunar what? Valve. So this is all about the heart and the circulatory system. So next time when somebody tells you, I love you with all my heart, maybe in English it is grammatically correct, but then scientifically we say it is wrong. Stop attributing the job of the brain to the heart. The heart is good at its job, so also is the brain. I'll see you in my next class.